episode of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And every Friday, Great Scott, it's your True Crime Phil, a show so good it happens every Friday. I hope. Scott Duffy is becoming a very busy man, so we're going to figure all this out. But the professor, you'll notice he's working on his PhD dissertation. I told him to continue through the show as long as he is listening. 1 week it is a Ferrari purchase. The next week it's the other best guest, who is the professor. And so he is always working. He's always in a professorial mode. Fil Waters, you teach though as well around the world, don't you? You teach how to get someone to confess, correct?
I have, yes.
And Scott Duffy, if I may ask, without being too intrusive, I see you diligently working. Can you tell us what you're working on?
You know, I'm always trying to advance the ball in teaching. So thoughts, but I'm working on a couple of different curriculums for police officers, and was teaching yesterday to all the wonderful any Delco people out there. Hats off to you. So I had a nice full class for an interview interrogation day for all quite a few detectives from Delaware County. So hats off to Delco people.
Oh, Delco is Delaware County. Okay.
Delaware
Isn't Delco
County.
also isn't Delco a company, like a battery company, or it's not Duracell, but I think there's a Delco.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Scott just gave me a mini heart attack, which I can't keep to myself, but he's getting busy. So if we'll figure something out. Fridays could become problematic for Scott Duffy, but you will continue to see his handsome face one way or another. Somehow I will not let Scott Duffy out of my grasp too far. We're going to get into the show in just a minute, but first I just want to let everyone know I would like a little bit of empathy. Last week I was dragged to it was 2 weeks ago. I was dragged to a party, and then I found out I had COVID and the flu simultaneously. Well, I get another bombshell dropped on me this week, Fil Waters and Scott Duffy. It is my middle daughter's 8th birthday, and months ago, the COE planned a mommy, daughter, and 20 other mothers so they can go out. It's an excuse to drink and party, but they're going to a little place called Disney World, not far from Miami. And so the moral of the story is I am going to be left behind to, as I say, babysit my other 2 children. How dare she? So they're leaving Saturday morning, and she's not coming back till Monday. So that leaves yours truly with my youngest and my oldest. And how dare I have to actually parent Scott Duffy? Have you ever been caught in this situation? A similar situation where you actually had a parent?
I'm trying to think at the top of my head if I had a couple of days, right? Probably.
This is a real father here. This is a real father. My father, may he rest in peace, and I love the guy. Different generation. He went to work, and he very rarely would be able to get to a school program, a tennis match. Very rare. Fil Waters, you were a very busy man as your kids were being raised. You were undercover narcotics. You were a homicide detective. Would you attend, let's say, your son's high school baseball game or basketball game? Would you make it a point?
Oh, yes.
You did.
And whenever my daughters were, yeah. No.
So you were a very present father.
Yes. Certainly tried to be.
And what if there was a homicide? What if someone, God forbid, was shot and killed and you were called out and there was a basketball game? What would you do?
I'd have to leave.
You'd have to leave. And would your kids understand that?
Oh, sure.
By the way, Sarah's asking Scott, are you saying Scott has fathered children he is unaware of? I hope not. Um,
No.
Tori Vincent says it is not babysitting,
Yeah.
Joel, and she deserves a break from you. So, to put a wrench into all
It's
this,
true.
Scott,
True.
you have to know what is Sunday? What is this Sunday, Scott? It's a national holiday, not Monday, but Sunday is a national holiday. Do you know what it is?
I did. It's if are the Eagles playing?
The Eagles are out of it, but it is the Super Bowl. So, on top of having to babysit my own children, I've got to do it during the Super Bowl. So, I was already invited. A couple of dads were like, "You can bring your kids over, and we'll just collectively ignore them." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds good." But I just want everyone to know the plight that I'm dealing with here. And tomorrow, I promised. Look at Turquoise Kitten. Love how the dads have to babysit. Yes. Helen says, Joel, it is not babysitting. When I knew this would be controversial,
Yeah.
but
You opened it.
there's let me get Fil and Scott's advice on this. So there's two possibilities for tomorrow's daddy two kids trip. One is Boomers, which is in Boca Raton, and it is like go-karts, batting cages, bumper cars, arcade games. That's one choice, Scott and Phil. The other choice, take them to the Everglades and we go on like a swamp boat and try to see real alligators. And there's a potential of she says don't share locations. There's a potential of getting eaten by an alligator. Fil Waters, would you recommend the bumper cars and arcade type thing, or would you recommend the alligator trip on a swamp boat in the Everglades? And I have no idea why I chose those two. I'm open to other suggestions.
I would probably be more prone to the alligator trip in the swamp boat.
I thought Phil would say that. Scott Duffy, what would you prefer? Alligators or bumper cars?
Oh yeah, there's nothing like a bumper car. You know, they especially when you get the one that's just a little bit faster than all the other slow ones, and you just get to ram people.
Scott Duffy, when you would have these rare moments when your wife, the school nurse, was not around and you would have your children to yourself, would you say, I am the luckiest man alive. I've got these beautiful children. Or would you say, wow, if my wife was here, I could be at AutoZone buying a new car filter, and it's
I
getting
wouldn't
in
be
the
doing
way of
that.
everything.
Yeah.
Huh?
No, I wouldn't be at AutoZone, but they were rare, but I did enjoy them. You know, and at one point, you know, as mine are very close in age, so at one point, you know, having 4 under 5, it was a handful. But when you have 4, you put them together, it's amazing how they can entertain each other.
That's true. Look at this. Joel talks too much sometimes. This is true. Christina Jones says parenting is a 50-50 responsibility. You're not babysitting. SL Conley says, I worry for his kids. That's probably, don't go calling CPL. By the way, this is a horrible story we're doing today. Probably not a good segue. Joel said he was live 10 minutes ago. Okay. Anyway, I'll let you know. Abby says, let's all pray for poor Joel. Please do. Could use all the help, but I think we'll have a good time. I might even post photos on at Surviving the Survivor of my experience. By the way, Fil and Scott, before we get into the news of the day, I posted this yesterday, but you guys are not the most social media savvy guys. But Fil Waters, did you know that iguanas can stay underwater for prolonged periods of time? Did you know that, Fil Waters?
Iguanas?
Iguanas, yes.
I did not know that, but that's probably on my my top 10 list of things I care nothing about.
So let me tell you something. Let me tell you a quick story. And I have Bugs. Can you pull up that video? Actually, I'm going to send you this video, Bugs. And we'll try to get it in today. I'm going to do this simultaneously. So, Phil, the reason I bring this up is I walked outside yesterday and I have a little pool in the backyard. And lo and behold, I noticed Ethel pacing. I'm like, what is going on? Ethel was really pacing and going crazy. And I look into the pool and there's not one, but there are 2 iguanas at the bottom of my pool. They swim in the pool. I knew that they went in water. They're lightning fast in there too. But Ethel, who is a water dog, had enough and decided to dive into the pool. And it was amazing to watch because the iguanas remained very calm. They went to the very bottom because they knew instinctively, I think, that Ethel couldn't dive. And so they just hovered at the bottom. Ethel stuck her head down there, and after she knew she couldn't get to them, she came out. It's amazing. I have video, and we'll play it. But I am talking too much now, so let me introduce the show. And this is a
well,
rough one today.
I do like to learn something new every day, so that qualified.
Thank you, Phil. There you go. Now you can tell all your friends in the Ferrari Club that iguanas can stay underwater for many, many minutes, if not hours at a time. Nightwood says reptiles are cool. They're really freaky, but they are cool. Periodically, you will see one splattered on the road, which I hate, but it's like roadkill. There's so many iguanas, and it is not a pleasant sight. You know what? Since we're here, let's just do it right now. Watch this, guys. Here is a problem you will only encounter in Miami. Ethel the boxer, and then one iguana, two iguana underneath the pool water.
Oh my.
Oh boy, and Ethel is going in. This is going to be something that I've never seen this before. This is happening live on our cell phone. One iguana going one way, the other iguana appears to be paralyzed in this corner, not moving. The other one coming this way. Will Ethel be attacked by iguanas? Only in Miami would this ever happen. Ethel dove in unexpectedly, live, while filming this. Unbelievable action here. Unbelievable action. The two iguanas not moving. They realize that the dog, Ethel, cannot get to the bottom of the pool. Ethel, will you attempt to get back in there? Will you attempt to get back in there, Ethel? The battle of the iguanas in Miami continues live here from Miami Beach. Look at these guys. Look at the cojones on them. Unbelievable. What action. You going back in, Ethel? Phil, your reaction. That's all I can ask. It's an open-ended question. Your reaction, Phil.
Oh, I love Ethel's attempt to eradicate the iguanas from the pool, but of course does not have the capabilities to do that. So yeah, that was quite entertaining. I mean, truth is stranger than fiction. I mean, that was real stuff going on there.
Scott Duffy, your reaction to seeing that, the two iguanas?
Yeah,
you thought I was making it up, Scott. I bet you thought I was making it up.
So are iguanas there like squirrels are here? Are they just all over the place?
Everywhere. It's a problem. Look at this, Joel. I could be a sports announcer of the iguana race. Luann Pafford says the NFL is calling. Yeah, to answer your question, Scott, I was going to say something that people won't like, but I do have some friends who have like BB guns because they get so annoyed with the iguana. I would never do that. I love all animals. Would never, ever, ever do that. I would actually have a pet iguana if I could, but they are all over. There's like iguana pet removal people here in Miami. Yes, so they are everywhere.
Have they ever gotten into the house?
That's my wife's absolute biggest fear. I am not T-Pain. I would never go into that pool. So another thing about Ethel is she's very dexterous. Boxers are amazing with their paws, and so she can open doors. So periodically we will come home and the door will be wide open. And the COE has a morbid fear of cockroaches. There are cockroaches in Miami. No matter how clean you keep things, cockroaches will get in, and she's terrified of cockroaches. She's trained my 4.5-year-old son to kill them and get rid of them. But her absolute biggest fear and one of the greatest experiences and joys I could ever have is walking in to see my wife's expression with an iguana in the home. It would absolutely be unbelievable. So if that ever happens, you can guarantee I will get video of it.
They're relatively harmless.
Yeah, they are.
Why would you just arbitrarily kill them?
Because people are idiots. They don't, what they do, they poop on your lawn.
Oh no!
Like it.
Can't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
that
Yeah,
in their
and
natural
they're like,
environment. Oh yeah, can't have that.
yeah, they're little pellets, and people get annoyed. I love them. I think they're super cool, and like they move slowly. So anyway, let's get to some true crime here, since this is a true crime show, and this is a really disturbing, horrific, horrible story. So it's going to be a rough transition here, but the prosecution presented some gruesome details Thursday during opening statements in the murder trial of Adam Montgomery. He's accused of killing his 5-year-old daughter, Harmony, in New Hampshire, and then sickly moving her body from place to place for months at a time. His daughter, Harmony, cute little girl, she disappeared in 2019, but police didn't know she was missing until 2 years later. Her body's never been found. This is Harmony Montgomery. Fil Waters, since you are the veteran homicide detective, you've seen it all. But is there a special place in hell for this guy who, oh, that's not it. That's something I'm going to show you later. Sorry, that was my bad. That's something I want to get your take on. But is there a special place in hell for a person that kills his own daughter? And then we'll get into some of the details.
Well, I think there is. You know, in the book of Proverbs, chapter 6, one of the 7 things that God hates are hands that shed innocent blood. This guy is a monster, and what he did is an act of evil. And for those of you that want to try to equivocate on mental health issues, look, the reality is there's good and evil in the world. This guy committed an act of evil. And then to further that by moving around, moving the body around, and I believe I read correctly that he beat her because they were living in their car at the time, and she apparently had an accident in the back seat, and that resulted in his beating her to death. So this is the guy that I was just talking about, this case on Court TV the other day, and this is the guy that walks into the courtroom with a big grin on his face.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And by the way, Fil Waters, he is declined. I never even knew this was, I guess, in different jurisdictions. He's declined to attend his own trial. He's not there. Cowardly act, Fil Waters.
You talking about not showing up or
Yeah. He's not in court. He's decided not to attend his own trial.
I'm after his little performance there, grinning, walking in during jury selection. I would imagine his defense attorneys told him, you know, you're an idiot. We're not going to trot you out there again until we're in the midst of all of this. So I would not be surprised if he doesn't show up. I mean, he has been in court, but they're probably wanting to let that moment die down a little bit. But I mean, just what he did, he's obviously a coward. He's not a man. He's a, you know, evil piece of crap is what he is.
Scott Duffy, Ida, who's an attorney, because it says JD after her name, says allegedly killed his daughter. Now, look, this is why we have trials. Meanwhile, Colleen says he's an absolute monster. I tend to lean towards Colleen's side, but I see Ida's point here, where the process of the law has to take its course. Just some background, Scott, and then I want to get your take on this. He's accused, like I said, of killing his 5-year-old daughter. It happened in New Hampshire, and then he moved, according to Fil Waters, according to you guys who actually investigated this case, said he was moving the body from place to place. She disappeared in 2019, but police did not know she was actually gone or missing till 2 years later. So she goes missing in 2019, not discovered missing for 2 years. The body's never found. This is problematic. Scott Duffy, how in the world could a little girl, 5 years old, disappear and no one really knows it for 2 years later? I have an idea because there was drugs involved and she was being bounced around to different facilities. But are you, again, I must ask this question this week, does this shock you that it went 2 years without people realizing that she was gone?
Yeah. And no, it doesn't. Only because these things do happen, and it's so look at, especially if they're transient, and it seems like, hey, if you're moving from community to community, she's 5 years old as opposed to she's in school. So I don't has she yet reached a kindergarten or some sort of regular school attendance? So that's a piece that if she hasn't, then you're not really on the radar, and the family is really not part of the equation here. Who is there to notify police? And this is a big world, so it's very easy to get lost, and so to hide your crimes and move about. No, it doesn't shock me,
A-
unfortunately, but that
yeah.
is.
Yet again, I cannot shock Scott Duffy as much as I try. You look at this little girl, absolutely adorable. Little glasses, slipping off the bridge of her nose. Miss Wheelassie says he is a psychopath. I think that's at the very least is what he is. The charges, the most serious charge that Adam Montgomery faces is second-degree murder. He's also accused of assault and witness tampering, and he made some concessions that I'm going to get to in a moment. But according again to investigators, she had the day of the murder, she had a bathroom accident, and Phil, he basically was driving and was beating on her um, while she was driving. They say that she was killed on December 7th, 2019, but the defense says it happened the night before. And now what the defense is doing, they're saying, no, it's not Adam Montgomery. It is his estranged wife, Kayla Montgomery. Phil, is this just a defense tactic? How do we really know? Because they're both drug addicts. They were both abusers. Neither, well, I should say Kayla is not the biological mother, but Adam is the biological father. The entire defense here is going to be that it's his estranged wife, Kayla Montgomery, the non-biological mother. Why would the jury not believe that, I guess, Phil?
Well, I believe the prosecution is using her as a witness in the prosecution.
Yes.
I think.
She is the key state witness here. Yes.
And of course, the second degree, I'm not sure. Of course, the laws are different, obviously, in Texas, given her age. I'm not sure this wouldn't have been capital, but she, they've obviously, they're going to make a deal with the witness for her testimony. And sometimes, look, and people kind of sort of will question that, because if she was there when this happened, and we presume that she was, that she's as guilty of murder by omission as he is by committing the act. So she didn't do anything to intercede. And so she's just as guilty in terms of being there. And they're going to sometimes, there's a DA that I've greatly respected that was in Harris County when I was working, and we had a trial that the witnesses were similar to this, where they were just as bad as the defendant in terms of their character and what they had done or not done. And his comment was, when you have the devil for a defendant, you got to go to hell to get your witnesses. And he's right. And this is one of those cases. So, this is just he's got the little teardrop thing on his eye up here. And, that's significant in the sense that when you see that, it is presumably meant to indicate that you have, sometimes in the course of your life, you've killed someone. Now, my curiosity about that teardrop is when did he put it on? Did he have it on before he murdered his
That's
little
actually given
girl?
me the. I have no idea the answer to that. If anyone in
Or
SCS Nation does,
did he put it on there after he did it? So these are little curiosities that I have when I see people like this. So he's yeah. I mean, there's not enough that can be said about the
well, Phil,
evil.
CJ has a question for you, Phil. Phil, did people who hurt kids in your career make you the angriest?
Well, I think I've talked about this before. I mean, the short answer is yes. If it's involving children, if it's involving in the sense of what I would observe as a true innocent victim, and this person, by their own act of evil, has decided to deprive them of a life and a future. So, yes, I mean, to answer that specific question, there's just this is a sense of anger that is certainly justified.
Shout out to Dwayne Harris in Detroit, very generous guy, friend of the show, donating a super sticker here. Scott Duffy, by the way, someone pointed out he also has Jody pointed out he has a clown tattoo. So he's got the teardrop and a clown tattoo on his neck. But Scott Duffy, this is a quote from prosecutor Christopher Knowles from the state about Harmony Montgomery. She was a daughter. She was a sister. She was a Minnie Mouse fan. She was a fun-loving girl that loved being a big sister. She was just 5 years old when rheumatoid arthritis defendant brutally murdered her. That has to be an autocorrect. That is not right. COE. But it was just because people are asking me. I didn't know what you were talking about, but it was just 5 years old. That is a weird autocorrect in there. I have no idea what that is about, but you get the idea. Scott Duffy, he has elected, he has not been in court. Are you aware of cases where the defendant, I remember at one point, Lori Vallow Daybell, she didn't want to hear testimony about her children. So she asked the judge at that time, she didn't want to see the testimony, that she asked to leave the court. The judge said no way. But have you seen cases where the defendant, especially in a criminal case like this, is allowed to just not be part of the process?
So, personally, no, I have not had in any of my cases, but I've always believed from what I have gathered, and it could change location to location or jurisdiction, that the defendant, the one who is on trial, has that absolute right to cross-examine and be present for everything, and in that same breath not be present. So I would imagine it is a total choice. I don't see it as a wise choice, but in that regard, the choice typically is up to the defendant.
Tara Ellis with a super chat here. He was also Adam Montgomery, convicted of attempted murder for shooting someone in the face, and did some time and still got custody of her. Scott Duffy, one of the obvious issues that this entire case has brought up is a major, look at this, the COE apologizing. I am sorry, major typo. She's already got 1 foot in Disney World, obviously. One of the issues here, Scott Duffy, is Child Protective Services. I mean, there's serious issues there. No one caught this. I know this is kind of above your pay grade or beyond your pay grade or not part of your pay grade, but what do you think could be done to keep a little girl like this from basically going MIA for 2 years? Is there anything that can be done?
I mean, there are things that can be done. It would all come down to how many complaints are there against her where she is known to a family services? But, I guess as we see across the board, this being a horrible, horrifying example of what can happen, and of all things to a child, and then go um, undetected. How many criminals who are transient, whether it be serial abusers or rapists, and they move about, um, and just staying under the radar. And once they realize that people are starting to get wind of their evil deeds, that they move, and now they claim another community. So in this regard, I would like to know, has she ever been uh, a client of a family service, child family services, to where there should have been some checking in or not? There might
Yeah.
have
So
never
Scott,
been a
just
follow-up.
just to answer that question from Ms. Trial, I'm glad she put this comment here. Custody of Harmony was returned to her father in February 2019. Once Harmony was returned to her father's care and custody, because the mother is also a drug addict, her involvement with the department ended as she no longer lived in Massachusetts. He took her across state lines. So I think that was the issue. He took her from Massachusetts into New Hampshire, and I think that's where she kind of got lost in the fray. But does there have to be sort of, in your opinion, a like a federal safety net so that this sort of thing can't, like if you go from state, it's easy obviously to go from Boston or Massachusetts to New Hampshire. So does there have to be some sort of safety measure in place to catch that?
Yeah, and yes, there should be, and I'm not sure if there is. There are across the board in growing numbers of cases. For example, a teacher that teaches a couple of years and then just constantly moves, and the file never follows through. And then all of a sudden, it's like one after another. You realize, hey, if it could have been caught 2 hospital or 2 schools ago, and it's similar to nurses, doctors, or medical professionals who are involved in suspicious deaths. So there are these tripwires that are set to, hey, let's you can't just walk away and your file will be forever sealed. That must go with you. So I would imagine the same here. If they're not in place, they absolutely should be in place for the safety of children who are traveling. Now, granted, there are those who travel and are transient by nature of their job. Um, but in this regard, and there are unfortunately many cases similar to it, that especially of abuse of children, and so thereby you keep jumping communities and remaining under the radar. And if a file is closed and that's it, and is not accessible to another department in another state or another county, um, that is a problem, absolutely. But these are some of the failures in our system, both in the criminal justice system and of course in like this Department of Child and Family Services.
Connie says, I do not understand why Harmony didn't get to go with the adoptive family who wanted her. Just insane. And the foster mother, I think, already testified. Rachel says, I am a social worker. Saying this, we need more for CPS and APS. 3-hour wait times to report something is so disheartening. At least that's the way it is in California. A lot of the social services in California obviously have some issues. Fil Waters, this stuff gets graphic and very disturbing, but I'm going to barrel through it here. And this is to a guy who's seen it all. This is the state now, the prosecutor saying, just as she feared would happen, the defendant smelled what she had done, meaning she had a bathroom accident, and for that, he hit her. He began striking her as he was driving, holding onto the wheel. He began punching this little girl repeatedly for something she had no control over. He struck her blow after blow. This is, to me, the most demented, twisted part. After beating Harmony, the father, what does he do? He continues driving to Burger King, where he eats his food and did drugs. Fil Waters, I don't want to harp on this, but if my daughter stubbed her toe at school today, I would be there. I'd be worried. I would, be by her side. How you have this level of depravity as a human being that, number one, you do this to your own daughter, and the next breath you're eating a Big Mac, that's McDonald's, whatever the hell, Whopper, and doing drugs in the Burger King parking lot. Who is this guy?
Well, I think if we're going to categorize him, the difference between, at least in my simple definition, the definition between a sociopath and a psychopath is a sociopath does something that believes they're justified in doing. A psychopath commits an act, a sociopathic act, but enjoys what they're doing. And there's some kind of reward at the end of it. So just my, easy chair analysis of this, I think that he's obviously prone to violence in some form or fashion. That seems to be the only way he's able to react to things that he doesn't like. And when his little girl did what she did, he did not know how to handle that. And so he did what he did. And then he felt somewhat accomplished in what he had done. So what do? You had this little bit of weird perverted enjoyment about what he did because he set her straight. And then he rewards himself by going and getting a Whopper and doing some dope. So, this guy's a psychopath in my view. And again, he's in this incident and in his persona, he's the face of evil. And so somebody like this, it would be, as a homicide cop, he would be an interesting suspect to interview.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how, you always say you approach everything the same way, no real emotion. How could you go into an interview like this in the same way as every other, Fil?
Well, because that's what my purpose was as a homicide cop, and through training, my own experience, and whatever ability that I've been given, it was always about, I had to, you got to keep your eye on the ball here. I cannot make this personal. And regardless of what my personal feelings are, it's about justice. And it's about trying to bring about some sense of peace for, her other family members and other people that care about her. So, you've got to suck it up and do the job. If you're not, and I would even suggest that and it didn't happen to me, but if there was a suspect that I felt I could not interview because I couldn't get past what I may have felt about them in a personal way, then I would have recused myself from that interview. I'd have gotten my partner or someone else to do it.
I was going to ask you, you're a very measured, very smart, obviously one of the best homicide detectives ever to do it. But did you have other detectives who were, let's say, kind of hotheads who would not been able to sort of handle themselves in the same manner as you with a defendant, a suspect like this, and who would have basically wanted to beat the crap out of them and gotten a lot more aggressive? Did you see that? Did you see other guys with those types of attitudes?
Oh, sure. Didn't like it when I saw it. If I was a witness to it, at least on the monitor, I would tell them, look, you're going to have to somebody else is going to have to go in, or you're going to have to discipline yourself to ratchet it back, because you're not going to achieve the goal here. This is not a platform for you to go in and tell you how much of a piece of crap this person is you're talking to because of what they did. So it happens. We see it all the time, don't we? On these shows where we see the interview where the interviewer, the detective, gets. Speaking of which, I watched that show.
I was just going to ask you. I was just gonna. What do you think? This is American Nightmare, where the
Yeah.
detectives were right away, sort of tunnel vision, throwing the. What do you think of it, Phil?
Well, not that I didn't mean to change the subject here suddenly, but it did strike me. I tell you, it was very interesting. And recognize that we're only seeing, I think Scott mentioned this, we're only seeing snapshots, right? We're only seeing edited parts of a bigger interview. I would have liked to seen the entire interview with Detective Mustard, which I thought, what a name. You know, that's
Matt Mustard.
The Detective Mustard in the dining room with the candlestick. He did it, you know, that kind of thing. So,
if you were his superior in the homicide department, let's say he was at Houston PD, would you have had a talk with him, Fil Waters? I was thinking just now, like you would have been an amazing mentor to these other homicide detectives. But would you have had a word with him?
well, just to correct the term here, I would have never thought of myself as his superior, his supervisor.
Okay.
I've never thought of myself as being any superior to anyone, but be that as it may, I would tell you that, well, you know, he got at the end of the show, he got like Detective of the Year or something. At about the same point. So back to the interview, though, I would tell you that, and this is just, I wouldn't have done it the way he did it. I'll put it that way. The setup in the room was never, I would never have set up an interview in that manner. And in watching the portions of the interview that we do see, just based on, and I didn't, you know, of course, my wife is sitting there, we're watching this thing. She goes, well, you think he's lying, talking about the young man there. And I will tell you what we could see of him. And Scott, I don't know if you'll disagree or not, but I didn't detect any deception in the story.
Correct.
Yeah, by the way, we're talking about American Nightmare, which is a documentary on Netflix, which has a very crazy twist at the end. But the detectives basically are convinced that the victim is their suspect. Let's put it that way.
And what I thought was most inappropriate, with all due respect to the FBI, was the agent who came in there, the polygraph examiner, who came in there and acted like a total jackass.
He did, and he told him he failed when he passed.
And then he turns around and he lies to them about the result of the polygraph. Now, later on, I think at the end of the show, it wasn't there. It was undetermined. I mean, there was no. It was if it had been in Vegas, it'd been a push. So,
inconclusive.
What's that?
Inconclusive.
Yeah, it was inconclusive. So he, but he lies to him, and he's getting in his face, and he's doing all that stuff. That accomplished absolutely nothing, and I didn't detect any change in his demeanor in the way he told that. I mean, just know that I didn't detect any deception at all. And so the detective who just decides, you know, I don't believe you. I don't think you're telling us the truth. I think you did something. And her name is it Denise? Was her name Denise, I think?
Good question. It's not Denise. Maybe it is Denise. I don't know. Someone will let us know.
And then so they don't I know the little guy from the Bahio Police Department, the little lieutenant that jumps up there, and he's the face of the department, and he's the parrot that's pretty much saying what the chief's telling him to say. That was embarrassing. I mean, and then when they get up there and they're, you know, we don't believe them, blah, 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 blah. And then she shows up at her parents' house. Then they interview her. I don't detect any deception there. And then the question is, my mind, you know, in just watching the show as it progressed, is what would be the motivation here? I mean, I get
Yeah.
one person, there was one woman, I forget where it was, maybe California.
By the way, look at this comment. It says you both have to write books. I've been telling you. I put Scott in touch with my publisher, so I'm going to get Fil needs to write a book too. But here's the name, Fil, Denise. Huskin.
Yeah, Denise. So, we have had some cases, women that have gone out and they fabricated a kidnapping and all that crap for attention or whatever their nut job reasons were. But in this case, I didn't detect that from these two individuals telling that story. And it did sound crazy. I got to say that. But you know what? I mean, it should have been pursued in the manner in which it was being told, not trying to redirect it. So they took evidence a direction they wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And a detective should never do that. Ever, ever, ever.
It was an incredible story. Like, it didn't seem
believable. Well, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was laser sights and putting swimming goggles on her and all this craziness and putting her in the trunk of a car and then
Phil, the flip side of that, I think, is that it's hard. Wouldn't it be hard to make that up because it's so outrageous? You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know. People, there were some things about it. I was, because my wife and I were just sitting there well, that story's just too crazy. I mean, it's got to be.
I would have loved to. I would have loved to have filmed you and your wife watching this. That could have been a whole STS episode. You and your wife.
Well, it was just very interesting, and then again, so you get detectives now, Detective Mustard and everybody. They are tunneled.
Ketchup.
They're tunneled on this thing. Yeah, Chief Ketchup and Lieutenant Mayonnaise and Detective Mustard. They're tunneled out. They do not believe this story. They think they've been used for whatever purpose. And I think the lieutenant gets up there and talks about how they've used resources with the sheriff, with the police department, and blah 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 blah. And they go after these two. And I'm just kind of like, wow, what a stupid. And then when they depose the chief, I mean, he was pitiful, I thought, in the deposition. There's no way he can explain his way out of the way they treated those two people.
Horrible.
So, and then when you come out with, because you listen to the story about she's in this room and then there's like other people there and they're all wearing and then it turns out it's a bunch of blow-up dolls dressed in black.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's an incredible freaking story. And the other thing too, I hate to keep going on and on about this, but it was just really great to watch this show and watch the way that this investigation was conducted. Now, one of the things that I thought was odd about Detective Mustard that he didn't do was this story was so crazy that there wasn't, and these same things occurred in about 3 or 4 different locations around that area. I mean, even in Tahoe, which is like 115 miles away or whatever. So I'm just surprised that there wasn't a little bit more digging to call some other agencies. Say, hey man, we got this crazy thing going on over here. Have you run across anything like this? Because that's too weird for it not to have happened, multiple times. So that was there were just some things about the detective work, about the investigation that I thought really fell short in terms of the investigation.
Yeah, we just took a fork in the road here. We were talking Harmony Montgomery and Adam Montgomery. We'll get back to that in 1 second. But this is the Netflix documentary American Nightmare about a bizarre investigation where the victims appeared like suspects to the police. Scott Duffy, number one, can a person fail a polygraph test, or is it just inconclusive, Scott?
No, a person can fail. So I think, and everything evolves. It's fail, inconclusive, pass. And so, law enforcement steadily uses polygraphs for, for background investigations, and you have to pass. If it's inconclusive, then you have to return. If the examiner can't do a follow-up examination right then and there. If you fail, that's it. But in certain agencies, in our agencies, there is an appeal process, but ultimately, the examiner, through experience and whatnot, should be able to read whatever they are reading. I'm not a polygrapher examiner, but I have some good friends that are, and that but they're not going to make a decision. They're going to allow a supervisor and a much more experienced individual to review. So there is a process for hey, it doesn't look bad, it doesn't look great, is there something I'm missing? And so specific to the Netflix show, that was pretty interesting to watch. It was unfortunate, and I've employed examiners both on the local level and federal level.
Did you know him?
I did not know him, either one. There were two of them, of course, the
Yeah.
examiner and then the case agent. But but examiners who worked on, so let me say, examiners typically are not case agents. That means lead detectives. And so thereby an examiner comes in, examines what they think, and then walk out of the room. They are not there to all of a sudden take over and try to get whatever. They will then report to the detective and a case agent to say, this is my opinion. You guys can take it from there. That's typically how it should work. So, but yeah, so typically pass, fail, and inconclusive.
Well, I can tell you my experience with the polygraph. I didn't use it a lot. Number one, it's not admissible. And number two, I only use it as a tool to maybe convince a person I'm talking to that this might bring them closer to talking to me, but in telling the truth. But I can tell you, Joe, you asked the question about, can you fail it? Can you pass it? Can be inconclusive, is what Scott's talked about. I had a case, interviewing a guy. I was brought in to interview him. He was the suspect. He matched kind of sort of the descriptors. And long story short, after I got through interviewing him and I played him a tape of a witness who had talked about him, and he looked at me and he said, that's not me they're talking about. He had some similarities, but I said, would you take a polygraph? He said, yes, I will. He goes up, he's taking a polygraph, which takes about 3 hours or longer to administer a polygraph properly. They don't just give you one test. They give you probably a minimum of 3 times that you're on the box so they can compare and contrast. But when I got up there, I went and found the correct suspect. And I went to the detective who is lead in this case and told him, you got the wrong guy in here. This is your suspect, and he's in prison in Abilene on a similar offense. So I go up to get the guy from the polygrapher, and I sit down with her. She's telling me her evaluation, and she tells me, I've never seen anyone fail a polygraph in the manner in which he has. And he was telling the truth the entire time. So I don't have a lot of stock in polygraph exams. And I know a lot of it depends on the examiner. And I will tell you that I've done polygraphs where people passed them, and I was shocked that they passed them. So it was kind of one of the fact that they passed the thing, I went, oh, okay, well, then what they're telling me, my reading of them is correct. So, the polygraph it's kind of voodoo science in my opinion.
Well, there you go. Fleur de Lis, hello, everyone. Look at this. This actually jolted me. It actually jolted me. just wrote the word nugget. Fil, we have to get back to Scott and Adam Montgomery in a moment, but do you ever get? I know you're not on the best terms with Nugget's biological parent there on the Big Island, but do you ever get a photo or request a photo? Do you stay up to date with Nugget while you're stateside, not on the island?
Not with them, but I do have Confederates there in the area who will give me Nugget reports.
Okay,
So,
excellent. Oof.
yes.
I feel relieved. Okay, let's get back to Adam Montgomery here. Of course, he's on trial for the murder of his 5-year-old daughter. Scott Duffy, I'm trying to jolt you into some sort of feeling of shock, but it appears impossible to do. You have armor on you from you're like an armadillo from all your years at the FBI. Your armor cannot be penetrated. The prosecutor went on to say this. Of course, we left it off where Adam Montgomery beats his daughter to the point of killing her and goes to Burger King. So he picks up, he says he pulled into that parking lot at Burger King and he ordered his food. He ordered his food and he ate. He didn't stop to check on Harmony. He didn't look back at her. He didn't show any concern for this innocent little girl, the child he had just beaten. He ordered his food and he ate and he didn't stop. And then they say that he disposed of the body in March 2020 using a rented moving truck. He believed that there was no body to find, there would be no evidence of what he had done, and he would get away with this heinous crime. Scott, I just harp on this because I can't fathom or understand this. I cannot wrap my head around this. How do you define this person? Who is this guy? I know you're not a psychologist, but as an investigator, is he just one of these people that is unrehabilitatable? I know that's not a word. Is he a guy that is better off not being here on this earth, do you think?
Oh, that's a lot there. Well, so to go back to somebody, and he's not alone. This is we've seen this time and time again, and this is absolutely not the last that somebody, regardless of the somebody, but then add the fact that this is the father, this is a parent. And there is supposed to be with that parenting, biological or not, adopting that there's just this unimaginable love, there's no depth, there's no measurement. It is limitless, right? And I can say, as I've experienced that with each one, and it just grows, and it's you try to explain it, it's not explainable. It's tough to tell to somebody who is not a parent.
It is
Yes,
incomprehensible. It is incomprehensible unless you're forced to take them to bumper cars. Other than no, I'm actually really looking forward to it.
So then add that to the fact that you kill them, you brutalize them, you abuse them, and there is that, at least from what we're hearing reports, this pattern of abuse. It's not a one-off. It's not a, oh my gosh. And then as the district attorneys are explaining that, then this happens, go to Burger King. There's almost this matter of fact. It didn't matter to me. It was just something. Why didn't I do it before or earlier? It is so depraved. It is just as incomprehensible to understand the depth of love a parent has for a child. I would say, as I see it, it's the evidence is there, but then it is equally unexplainable of just how somebody can do that to any child, but much less their child, and move about. So it is very difficult to understand, and the unfortunate thing is this, it happens again and again.
And I will now direct every question to Scott from because of this comment from Elliot Matthew. Why is Joel so obsessed with Fil? He talks way too much, meaning Fil and myself. I always feel bad for Scott when he's on. When Fil, he sits there silently, and Joel constantly ask Fil questions. I'm gonna
Don't
go
feel
home.
bad for me, Elliot. Don't feel bad.
I'm gonna
This
go
is
home and take a.
Well,
This
you
is
know
maybe
what? I mean, I'd be curious
this is
to
why
go back
Scott says he
now.
can't do
You're
Fridays
getting
anymore.
You're getting much better, and you know we share equal time. I'd be curious just to go back and look at some of these replays and see how much time Scott talks and how much time I talk and how much time you talk, and I bet it's going to be pretty much the same.
I
would
think we
agree.
have to get one
I
of those,
would
like,
agree.
you know, like Fox Sports, where they do like the analytics in real time. I wish I had the money for that software.
Yeah.
By the way, the
So
COE's
people
birthday
like
is
Elliot
coming
either
up.
need to quit watching or just get over it. Good grief.
Look
Give
at
me a
this,
break.
by the way. This is an odd show that we do on Fridays, but this is our mod Frankie Figs, and that's her son. Iggy lived over 21 years. Look at this, Frankie. It's a beautiful photo. That's exactly what they look like here in Miami. I might have to get, you know, the COE's birthday is on the 19th of February. Someone just said 10 days away. R.I.P. Iggy. But perhaps I will get her an iguana for her birthday. What does everyone think? Let me know if it's a good idea. Shout out to Frankie Big Son for this. Scott Tuffy, I have to go back to you now because of my bias towards Fil. You're not leaving. By the way, there's no way Scott's leaving us on Fridays. I'm going to figure something out. But it's not because I only speak to Fil, is it, Scott? That's not the reason, is it?
I love you guys. Not for a second.
Okay.
Well,
But
you're not leaving all Fridays, right? I thought you
no.
you said next Friday.
Yeah, definitely next Friday. But then we'll talk
But
about it.
you're going to make it work, Scott.
Yeah.
Where I don't want to pressure you on air, but you're going to make it work, right?
I will make it work.
Well,
All right,
heaven
good.
forbid if Scott's not there and it's just me, Elliot will have a freaking aneurysm.
And
So,
Elliot will have an aneurysm. I think next week, Fil Waters, I'm going to bring in another Fil, PHIL, named Ramos, who was a
good guy.
Las Vegas homicide detective for about the same amount of time as you, and he did undercover narcotics.
I think I've been on something with him. Yeah, he's
an interesting guy, and you guys, in a weird way, remind me of each other. But he wears 2 earrings in each ear. You only did that during undercover narcotics days, but he does that modern day, and he's a bad man, as they say, in a good way. Scott Duffy, on the first day of his trial, and we'll start to wind this up in a little bit. I've got some sound though I want to play. Out of nowhere, Adam Montgomery basically came out with what they called a concession, not a plea. Some people were calling it a plea deal, and basically admitted to falsifying physical evidence and abusing a corpse. But again, the defense is pointing the finger at Kayla Montgomery. Was that some sort of defense tactic, you think, to say, you know, I'm guilty, and even the defense said you should find him guilty, but not of murder? Is that a defense? Is that gamesmanship here?
I mean, obviously, that's where defense is going. I'm trying. I have not read a lot of the foundation to this, so I'm a little more curious as to the. I take it she's not the biological mother. She's his wife or something, or
she is
stepmother.
she is his estranged wife, not the biological mother.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and they're both in the drug game together. So that's number one. That's their number one love and choice in life. And the child, for all intent and purposes, took a back seat to that lifestyle. So I don't know enough but obviously it makes sense for the defense. Hey, put it on your fellow drug user. And especially if the fellow drug user is the key witness to a lot of the, for example, this Burger King run and whatnot, right? I imagine that's coming from the witness or the estranged wife. So it's it's an argument that probably the only argument that he has, and hey, blame the other one. And it would be interesting to see if there is more of a group effort here, or is it just somebody who remained quiet and made no concession or to step in and intervene. So it's definitely a defense move, and I guess it all depends just how good this person is on the stand to come forward. So we'll, see how it plays out.
By the way, today Scott has to leave in 23 minutes, and yours truly, Fred Brown, our new puppy, has his first vet appointment. So usually we go a little longer, but I think this is all a ploy from Scott because I've been favoring Fil. So now I'm paranoid and I'm feeling guilty, and I will have to call Scott this weekend and talk myself off the ledge and make sure that Scott is okay and not insulted by my obvious bias towards Fil. Little Bit says, I love you, Fil, but I am faithful to Scott. This is amazing. Scott, look at the doors that could open up for you here at STS. Scott, can you record my voicemail away message? You're now being asked to do voiceover work. Look at the opportunities coming to you from STS. Also, a quick programming note. Donna Adelson is back in court on Monday. We're doing live court coverage. We're doing a live show Monday night. We're doing a live show Tuesday night. On our other channel, we've got the Michelle Troconis case going. And then Wednesday, not today, but I'm curious to get these guys' take. Cain Velasquez, the former UFC heavyweight champion, found out a pedophile was molesting his daughter. He went after him. He shot at him. He shot the wrong guy. He was out on bond, but he's going to trial. There's a tremendous public outcry for him because his child was molested. It's going to be a very interesting trial. And then Thursday, we're back on Adam Montgomery as this trial continues. So that is a quick look. And next week, I've got some sound here. Let's play. This, I think, is the state. Two quick bites. And then there's a piece of video that I have specifically saved for the last few minutes. It is jaw-dropping. It is disturbing. And it happened right in Miami Beach. And I want to talk to Fil and Scott about it. It is a cautionary tale. That's coming up right after this Adam Montgomery stuff. Here we go. This is the state, I believe.
Where is Harmony Montgomery? Where is Harmony? When people across this nation, from Florida all the way up to Alaska and everywhere in between, were looking for Harmony, there's one person who is not. One person. The one person who should have been looking for Harmony was not. Her biological father.
It's a strong argument there. Fil Waters, again, the defendant, not in there. I'm curious, Fil, what do you think of I always look at it because I was a broadcaster. This guy seems to have an interesting way of telling a story. But what was your very first impression right there of hearing him speak? Was that a good argument he was making? Does he have a good courtroom presence, do you think?
That was the prosecutor, right?
Yeah, that was the state. Correct.
Yeah. So that, for a jury, you have to paint them a picture. And he is painting the picture of depravity that this defendant exhibited then and is exhibiting now. And he is putting this puzzle together for them so that when they get into that room to deliberate, they're going to have the full picture of this defendant and why he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So he's covering everything here. And for this guy to posture, I think, by pleading to the, desecration of a corpse or whatever and tampering with evidence, that kind of thing. What is he's thinking that's going to show that he's being a good guy. So they're doing that because their argument is that it was the wife who the prosecution's using. So all they need to find is one person on that jury to get reasonable doubt tossed. And that's what they're trying to do. So I think they're making the best play they can given the circumstances that they're under.
I'll have a word with the COE about these typos. Rheumatoid arthritis will now be a new catchphrase. Might need a shirt made up, a graphic tee that says rheumatoid arthritis, but I can't make light of this case in any way. Peggy Rorden here, playing catch up here. I was an investigator for 20 years and interviewing perps for kids. We cannot allow our feelings to enter the picture. I called it keeping an edge. We let the feelings out later. That is exactly what America's most respected homicide detective, Fil Waters, said moments ago. But if I don't speak to Scott, I will get more hate mail. Scott, I'm very nervous right now over this. The defense attorney, Scott Duffy, said Adam is not innocent here. Adam Montgomery, however, did not kill Harmony. Investigators said this is so upsetting that he moved her body for 3 months. He moved her from a friend's car to a cooler in the hallway of his mother-in-law's apartment, to a ceiling vent of a homeless shelter, to an apartment freezer. I don't even understand this. And kept her then for a while in a tote bag from a hospital maternity ward, and then put her into a baby stroller. Scott Duffy, does any of that stun, shock, surprise, dismay you? It's really, really, really disturbing to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely disturbing, dismayed. I'm disturbed. It's shocking. It's sad. It's absolutely all the above. But it will be interesting to see how the defense. Yeah, it's a good way to go. He's a bad guy in the sense he's not a great father and often, this and that, but not the killer. And because the charge is murder. So he's trying to say, hey, I'm not trying to paint my client in this best light, like he's not done anything wrong. And then, of course, abuse of a corpse. So he's given everything in the front end and the back end, with the exception of, as we would say, this text bridge. Just jump over the facts and the evil deed there, and there before, thereafter. So which further goes to show the depravity of how somebody can do something to somebody so bad. Of course, here an innocent child, and then to it's just evil is the absolute worst word you can think of. So it is just this, not a care in the world for this body, and to carry that almost as a trophy, as opposed to, we got to get rid of the body, whether you bury the body somewhere or, get rid of the body, get rid of the evidence. So there is that depravity that goes when you take this. It's almost like you're just just over and over and over again, disrespecting, dishonoring this.
And the body was never found. The body was never found.
It's amazing.
What the hell? What just happened here? I have no idea. The COE just did this. I don't know what that was. That could be Space Coast messing around. Kind of like that in a weird way. So witnesses started to take the stand. We're going to wrap this part of the story up in a moment. But Harmony's foster mother, a woman named Michelle Raftery, bless her heart in a good way, she took the stand, obviously did her part fostering this mother, and by all accounts was doing an amazing job, but had Harmony taken away. And then Harmony's biological mother, a woman named Crystal Sori, also took the stand, and she said that she was reaching out to Adam for over a year, that she had last seen Harmony in April and tried contacting Adam, like I said, for over a year, but had no success. She described her daughter as a smart little girl who was talkative and friendly, and said that she originally lost custody of Harmony in 2014 when she was just 2 months old, and admitted that she was a recovering drug addict, and then they reconnected in March 2016. This is a piece of sound from the defense. We'll get these guys' take, and then we'll move to the final piece of video for today.
But Adam Montgomery did not kill Harmony. Adam Montgomery did not beat Harmony in the head as he approached the Burger King drive-thru. Adam Montgomery did not cause Harmony's death. Kayla Montgomery was the last person to see Harmony alive and know how Harmony died. But she didn't come clean with Adam. She didn't come clean with the police. and she will not come clean with you.
Fil Waters, I would be a terrible juror because I'm already convicting this guy. I don't care. I would not be listening to the evidence. That's how I should never be a juror. I'm too emotional. Obviously, the defense ploy here, she's got immunity. She's the state's key witness here, but the defense is saying she just did everything to save herself. How do you like negotiate that as a juror? How do you really know? How does one really know? Because there's no body.
Well, given the evidence they have and the testimony that they're going to get, this is really the only defense he's got. Blame it on somebody else. So it doesn't surprise me. I think the jury is going to be tasked with looking at the evidence and seeing where the evidence leads. And did the prosecution present a case where they can come back with a verdict, a guilty verdict beyond a reasonable doubt? So it's just part of the process. And he is, again, we say this all the time, but he's presumed innocent until he's convicted, if he's convicted. So, and he gets to have the most capable defense that he can be provided. So, this is the way the process works. And again, it's kind of one of these things where everybody loves sausage, but we don't want to watch it being made.
Scott, you ever feel a tinge of guilt for almost loving your dogs as much as your children? I've experienced that. Have you ever experienced that, Scott Duffy? Has that ever entered your mind?
It does.
It does. Okay. I just want to know that I'm not out of
that
the
close to the
norm.
vest.
I will. Rachel Wyatt, he is a monster and guilty. I would have to agree. Okay, so Scott Duffy has to leave in about 10 minutes today, and I try to honor these guys, especially since I want them back. This next story, by the way, and I prepared like 20 other stories because I always over-prepare, even though sometimes, every once in a while, I get a 1-star review saying this host sucks, he's unprepared. It only happened once. I still hate you, whoever you are. My mother says to take the high road and be nice. I hate you. Okay. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. Okay, so Fil and Scott, this is a very disturbing story. This happened yesterday in a CVS that my mother, Carm, goes to get her prescription medications on 74th Street and Collins Avenue in Miami Beach. I could walk there if I needed to. This is a mother and father and I think it's a 4-year-old child leaving CVS when a man comes in and tries to abduct the child. Let's watch this and see what these investigators have to say. Okay, it's there's no audio on this. So, okay, let me just set this up. You'll see it. That's the father now getting this guy in a body lock. But what happens, I hope it replays, it will. And there's no audio on this, but obviously this is the entrance to the CVS. The father, the mother, the child are walking out when that guy who he's now in a body lock attempts to pick up his child and run out of the store. So let's just watch it again and we'll let it play out. That's the father. That's a little kid in a striped shirt. The mother is somewhere right there, and in walks the perp. I don't know why there's no sound on this, but that's a whole other story. Here we go. That is the suspect, 26 years old. You see him there. That's the father in the pinkish shirt. He pulls his sweatshirt off. That is the outside. This is obviously a news report. It's security cam. There's no audio. I'm going to play this one more time. That's the little kid in the striped shirt. Dad rips off the perp's sweater. This is obviously part of an interview. You see it again. Boom. Scott Duffy, to you, what are you seeing here? And the more important thing here is, what if this happened to one of us? But what are you seeing? Break this down for us here. I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
playing
So,
it in slow mo.
y- okay, this one catches me off guard some. The fact that you have somebody that is willing to do all of that in a flash. I gotta believe there's something, let's just break this down. There's got to be something of like some surveillance. Where is this guy watching them, and then he's like, okay, I got to perfectly size it up. This just really throws me for a loop that he does that inside a store, surrounded by people, and he actually thinks he can get away with it. So, um,
My wife said, "What would I have done if I was alone?" He happened to be with the father, who's a pretty big guy right there.
yeah,
Um, what I mean, Scott Duffy, is there any advice that you could offer? I mean, this is apparently. Oh, look at this. There are reports on the mom blogs of Miami that he was seen at 2 local playgrounds that day too. Um, Obviously a sicko,
yeah.
sick bastard. But what do you do, Scott? What would you do?
Yeah, I would say that father absolutely could have taken that as far as he needed to take it to, and I'm thinking as he sees his daughter being saved, um, that it could have gone a lot further, and I think that father would have been totally justified. There's no doubt that that guy was looking to do nothing but the absolute harm to that child. That was not a that, in my opinion, was going to lead to a deadly encounter.
Scott, let me
And
ask you, if you had your firearm, and let's say you weren't the dad, let's just say you were there, would you have drawn your weapon?
it's tough to say there, because there, you know, I think the father just instinctively fantastic job just to grab him, um, and pummel him.
Mm.
To take out my firearm, it would be, okay, I gotta make sure I got a clean shot. There's a big scuffle going on there. So, um, but aside from that, that father, I think, could have taken that as far as it needed to go, because that was, in my opinion, where he had absolutely no fear of anything, obviously being detected, from what I can see, that man would have done the absolute worst to that child. And
Yeah,
so
and I
so
know there's no
deadly
real way to
force.
tell, but do you
Yeah.
think that do you think he was high on drugs right here? Because to be that bold, I would think you'd have to be in a different state of mind.
Yeah, I would love to know a little bit of the history of how many lures, attempts, etc., any sex assaults in his history. Um, a 26-year-old versus a 4-year-old. We're not talking about kidnapping of a teenage woman, young woman, or something like. We're talking about a 4-year-old. That's extreme. And
Mm.
so, gosh, I'm not so sure I've seen this in any
Mm.
course of anything that I've done, where somebody would be willing to do that in a school in there, as opposed to waiting out, doing a little bit of surveillance, like reports of him
It's
watching
also
children.
yeah, someone's asking. He was arrested. He's at the same jail that Donna Adelson was at, Turner Guilford Knight, and I hope this guy rots in there. Fil Waters, by the way, a comment from Christina Jones. Joel, you are a very skilled interviewer and you are always prepared. Yes, I am. However, you do seem to have a blind spot when it comes to your bromance or crush on Fil Waters. Maybe I'm guilty. I don't know. Guy's America's most respected homicide detective. I'm a nerdy Jewish kid from New Jersey. Of course, I'm going to have a bromance on a homicide detective from Houston. What do you expect of me? Guy's a homicide detective. He's drinking whiskey right now on air, I think. He drives Ferraris. He lives in Hawaii. Of course, you want to be Fil Waters. I mean, that's the guy that you want to be. Drives Ferraris. I put Magnum PI as a theme song every week. I mean, but I would like to be Scott Duffy too, because Scott's the silent assassin. Scott's the one that in this situation would have pulled out like a red laser on his little sidearm and would have put a bullet between this guy's eyes. And that would have been, in my opinion, a job well done. Phil, I went on a little rampage here. Phil, what are you seeing here? Have you ever seen something this bold, the middle of the day, the absolute middle of the day, and this guy comes and tries to abduct this little kid when the dad jumps in?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is nothing terribly unusual in terms of what I've seen. But my question is what's the motivation? I mean, do we know why this turd went in there and tried to snatch this kid?
We don't know. But Phil, let me ask you, because this is where my bromance grows. Let's say you're not the father, but let's say Detective Fil Waters is on vacation in Miami Beach, and he's at CVS buying SPF 98 for the beach, and you're walking out at the exact same time. What are you doing here, Fil Waters?
If I'm walking into what's happening here?
Yes, correct.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's going to be if you don't see the beginning of this thing, you don't know who the players are and what their part is in this. So, you could walk in the middle of it and see just the two guys struggling with each other, and then it would be a matter of trying to split them up. I'm sure someone would say, he tried to snatch, the guy's going to, I mean, this dude here, the dad, that's a big pork chop eating guy. I'm surprised that guy walked in there and tried to pull that stunt.
Yeah. I would be so shocked because it's like you would never expect it. I mean, this is a horrible question, Phil, but when you're at a public place and you've got a young child, should you expect something like this could happen?
Well, I don't think you expect it, but I think parents need to be aware of where their kids are at all times. So that means going to the bathroom, depending on their age, of course. If you've got a couple of kids, send them together. I mean, you've got to keep an eye out for your kids. And I tell you what, I used to work the livestock show and rodeo here in Houston, and I was posted up in an area where a lot of traffic right by NRG Stadium and where the carnival was and that kind of thing, and a lot of kids. And I tell you what, I don't know how many parents I had come up to me and, I've lost my kid. I mean, you hear it all on the radio all night long. Lost child, lost child, lost child. And then we had a protocol, of course. We would immediately put it out in the air, what they looked like, so forth and so on. But I was always amazed at the parents that come up, you lose your kid. I mean, and it doesn't take much. I mean, especially in that kind of a setting, you can turn around and turn back around and they're gone.
Now, Phil, let me
got real inventive where they had them all looped together. In Brother Where Art Thou? You remember at the end of the movie where he's got the kids are all looped together on a little leash. All the little girls are all looped together, and I saw somebody do that, which was pretty funny. They had like 4 or 5 kids, and they had little leashes on them, and of course the parent had the lead, so they knew if something got pulled that they'd turn around and look. So yeah, it's a full-time job though, man. I mean, you never know when something like this can happen. I mean, who would have thought they went to CVS?
Look at this. The COE says she could be wrong, but I don't think the suspect knew that the dad was with the woman and child. So maybe he wasn't expecting.
Well, he probably didn't. But I mean, the fact that he's going in there and there's another male adult right there, it really, to me, it's kind of like, really, dude, you walk in there and there's this pork chop eating dude standing behind him, and you're going to go ahead and grab the kid anyway, unless he was just so focused on the kid that he didn't even see it. But I'm
Phil, I got to ask let me change the dynamic. Let's say you are the father and this was 30 years ago. Would this guy have been staring down the barrel of your 45, Phil?
Well, I'm kind of like Scott. You're going to do what you can do at the moment in time. I think right here, I mean, getting my hands on the freaking guy, and he's going to be brought under control. So, whether a gun gets into it or not, the first thing here is you got to get the guy under control. So,
Scott Duffy, let me ask you the same question so I'm not accused of bromancing Phil. Let's say you were the father and this happened 20 years ago. What would your instinct have been, Scott Duffy?
I mean, it'd be immediately like that dad, and I probably would keep going. I don't think I would have pulled back. But dad here did what he did. He realized.
Hold on a second. What does that mean? You would have kept going. You would not have pulled back. You would have pummeled this guy into oblivion. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think at that point I would. It wouldn't end. It wouldn't end until I determined this guy's going to be moving on. So you're now caught between a dad, but also as a law enforcement officer, it's like, hey, this guy just did exactly the worst thing that could possibly be done. And so I couldn't let him go. And knowing that, okay, my wife and child are inside and safe. Hey, I got a job to do now. So it would.
Well, I don't know about Scott, but I always carry my handcuffs. I mean, that would be the goal.
Yeah.
Is to get this guy. I mean, he's going to take some shots.
Yeah.
Whatever you got to do to get him under control, then get him handcuffed.
Phil, you still carry your cuffs with you? You were talking about your cuffs last week.
Yeah, really? I told the story about losing my handcuffs last week.
Yeah,
that long story that Vita was so quick to point out.
Yes, yeah, 100%. Look at Andy's school. My two older sons used to watch Phil with me when he was on his show between Phil and Pet from U.S. Marshals reality show. My boys planned them. Look at this, Phil. You were already inspiring another generation of law enforcement. You didn't even know it. Their defense attorney father wasn't happy. We love Phil. You were inspiring young men by being on a show, Fil Waters. This has been
God bless them if they want to get into this mess today.
It's been a heavy, horrible show, and Scott has to go. But wait, what do you do, COE? What's going on here? I just wanted to play this one last time. Here we go. Here is a problem you will only encounter in Miami. Ethel the boxer, and then what happened? One iguana, two iguana underneath. Are you seeing it? I'm not seeing it. Oh boy.
It was on there for a second.
It's going in. This is going to be something that I've never seen this before. This is happening live on our cell phone. One iguana going one way. The other iguana appears to be paralyzed in this corner, not moving. The other one coming this way. Will Ethel be attacked by iguanas? Only in Miami would this ever happen. Ethel dove in unexpectedly, live, while filming this. Unbelievable action here. Unbelievable action. The two iguanas not moving. They realize that the dog, Ethel, cannot get to the bottom of the pool. Ethel, will you attempt to get back in there? Will you attempt to get back in there, Ethel? The battle of the iguanas in Miami continues live here from Miami Beach. Look at these guys. Look at the cojones on them. Unbelievable. What action. You going back in, Ethel? Amazing.
Awesome.
Amazing. Scott Duffy, let's go. Let's start with Phil. I'm going to respect Scott and have him have the last word today. Phil, after all the accusations that I treat you preferentially, your final thoughts today, Fil Waters.
Well, I'm just happy to be here. And it brings me such joy every Friday to commiserate with the two of you. And it's a good way to start the weekend for me. And I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the STS Nation, even though we've got these people that are getting their panties in a wad about who's talking, but that's fine. That's okay. At least they're watching. So there you go. So yeah, but everybody have a great and joyous weekend.
Yeah. By the way, I haven't even told Fil and Scott on about this, but I'm quietly working somehow to get this show, and I will talk to Fil and Scott about this, on an actual TV channel. That's more to come. It's going to take a while, but I'm working on it. Look at this. Just thinking, you may want to celebrate STS. We're almost at 100,000 with a calendar. The men of STS in the merch store. Fil and Scott, you willing to show your 12-pack abs? Scott, would you show your 12-pack abs for the calendar, the men of STS? I think that's a no.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. Scott, your final word today.
Shirtless, is that the?
Well, we'll see. I mean, that's they're clamoring for your abs, Scott. I can only relay what they are clamoring for.
Okay.
By the way, Lorna McKenzie says, I was never a sports commentator. However, I did audition for the UFC. I had 2 weeks notice. And let me tell you something, play-by-play is a real skill. I studied for 2 weeks with a guy named Bruce Beck. If you Google him, he does the Olympics. He's a big-time New York City sports anchor. And I almost got the job, but I didn't. And I'm still bitter and angry that I didn't. But the COE says I would have then hated the UFC because I would have had to do it as a job. Love you, Fil and Scott. It says it all. Scott, your final words. You get the final word today.
Oh, so absolutely. I love being on with you two guys. I have absolutely no issues, and don't think for a second that I have any less time. So I would agree with Phil. I think if you go back, there's a nice even keel. So this is fantastic. I love it. I'm glad people are watching. I'm glad people are, providing all their opinions one way or another, good or bad. It's all good.
It is. And that's why we love you, America. Love you, Gambia and Uganda, who were in the chat this past week. And of course, the Republic of Ireland, Canada, the UK, and every single place that I've forgotten, which is a lot. Whatever that comment was, it said this will get them going. But see you Monday, everybody.